All right, awesome. So I am going to go ahead and get us started. Thank you, everyone who is joining us tonight. This is the Arrival Exam and Horse Management webinar for the 2024 Thoroughbred Makeover. I am Rayna Erasmus. I am your co-show secretary with Molly Hutchison and your program manager at the Retired Racehorse Project. And I am joined here with me today with Dr. Reed, who I will have introduce herself in just a second. But very quick housekeeping for you all is that we will be using the Q&A chat for this. So if you have any questions, please drop them in there as they come to you. And just know that most likely we're just going to go to those questions at the very end and catch anything that we didn't actually address during the webinar itself. This webinar is recorded. So in a couple days, it will be uploaded to YouTube. You can watch it, refresh your memory, or send it to someone else who's competing that might have not been able to join us live. There's going to be a lot of helpful information here today. So thank you all for joining us once again, and I'm going to pass it off to Dr. Reed.
Thank you. So I'll just introduce myself first, and then we'll kind of go along with our agenda. I'm Shannon Reed. I'm going to be the coordinating veterinarian for the makeover, and that gives me a couple of roles. It allows me to help get us through the arrival exam and then to stay on site and sort of help everybody work through veterinary related issues. And I will be joined at the Retired Racehorse Project by a team of probably at least 11 veterinarians now. And then there will be somewhere between 27 and 30 veterinary students that will be part of the arrival exam team. So that's kind of the gist of who the cast of characters will be. And yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Shannon. And do you want to just start off today with telling people what to expect when they arrive to the horse park and walk them through the process of the arrival exam, the different things the vets will be doing, how they should come prepared, all of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And this might get a little long-winded. So as I told you before, feel free to pop in and be like, did you really mean that? Or this is what it's going to look like. So I'm going to kind of give you the gist of how we see it going and then give you all a little bit to think about. So essentially, when you come to the horse park, it is on your timeline when you enter into what we call the queue to have your arrival exam. And the queue means basically in line, just like you were getting in line at a coffee shop or a restaurant or something like that, you're getting into the queue. And it is your discretion when you enter into that queue. And most of the exams should be done by Tuesday evening. If you are not planning to be in that arrival group, you do need to make special arrangements outside of that time period. Here comes a big loud motorcycle. So to get into the queue, what's going to happen is you should not go and check in for the RRP at the on-site check-in until you are essentially ready for your horse to enter the queue for the arrival exam. You can set up your stalls. You already know where you're going. You can take a deep breath. You can hand walk for a little bit. You can't get on until you have a bridle tag and things like that, but you can take a few minutes or longer than that to get into the queue. But when you check in at the desk to get your number and your saddle pad and enter and give them any last minute things you need to get in there, which we encourage you not to have a lot of last minute things, then you will enter into an electronic queue. And we are monitoring that frequently in the veterinary teams. And we're going to change a few things this year about how you might be notified that you're in the queue. You may be getting a text message, but essentially, once you enter into the queue, you need to have you or one of your representatives stay near the horse's stall because you don't have an exact time of when we will arrive. And there's some wiggle room to that, but we really need everybody to kind of stay around and have a representative available. So that's what will happen is you'll enter the queue of the exams by checking in, and then we will work through as fast as we can. And there are some times that are longer downtime than others. And I think we're going to improve our times this year even more than last year. And so once you are in the queue, what will happen is for the first part of the exam, the team will come to your horse's stall. And that's been really important because it keeps them a little bit quieter, a little bit calmer. They can be eating, they can be hanging out and be a little bit quieter. We really do want them to not have on blankets or leg wraps or things like that when we come for the exam. It is much easier for us if you just have a halter and a lead rope available and the team will come there. The team will probably consist of a veterinarian and several veterinary students, and then they'll go through part 1 of the exam with you and your horse. And generally, you will be the one that is handling your horse for the exam. And the first part of the exam is going to consist of several things. The first thing they're going to do is they're going to check our electronic records to make sure that you have the proper health certificate, Coggins tests, vaccinations, and all of those things on file. If you don't have that on file, we won't actually start the exam. So that needs to be there. And if any of the dates are wrong or anything is off in there, then we have to immediately work through that. So the first thing they're going to do is they're going to check as the veterinarian to say, yes, this is correct. Coggins, health certificate, vaccines, etc. Then they're probably going to scan for a microchip next. And the microchip scan needs to match up what has been registered with the Jockey Club and subsequently with RRP. We have that number, so you don't have to have that with you. We have it. It's on our electronic file, but they're going to check for a microchip scan. I'd say we find 99.8% of the microchips within the stall, but sometimes we have to do some dig a little deeper. In addition to the microchip scan, they're going to do what we kind of refer to as a TPR, or a temperature, pulse, and respiration, and that's going to be done on your horse right in the stall. And as part of that, they're also going to listen to the heart and lungs, not just for how fast it's going, but for rate and basically health concerns. If they notice that there's bumps or cuts or things like that, that usually just starts a discussion, which you can tell them a little bit about it and we can work through that. So the first part of the exam in the stall is microchip, paperwork, TPR or physical exam, and also the body condition score. And the body condition score will be maybe discussed between the vet students and the veterinarian, but ultimately the veterinarian is the one who enters the body condition score. You may notice them just scoring your horse by looking at it vaguely and being like, yep, that's at least a 5. And if it is on the borderline at 4, they are probably, and they have been asked to put their hands on your horse and do the body condition score with the proper Henneke body condition score system. So you can look in the rule book and you can look online to see what that entails if you're getting nervous, so that you understand that just being a little bit ribby isn't going to be enough to move you down. And we are tight with the body condition score of 4. That's not negotiable, but there are the ways in which we arrive at it are pretty fair, in my opinion, but that's the system we're using. So again, within that system, you're going to have the check of paperwork, the check of the microchip, the TPR, temperature, pulse, and respiration, the discussion of lumps and bumps and bruises or anything that's going on with the heart rate or lung sounds, and the body condition score. And if all of those exam findings meet the requirements, then you will have passed the first exam. There is a second part to the exam, and that occurs, we haven't yet finalized this, but it's generally in an area of the horse park between 2 barns that we can be a little bit quieter, but it's the soundness check. So once you have finished part 1 of the exam, you don't get your sticker to say you're ready to participate until you complete the soundness check. And that's a different area that you will walk your horse to. It's likely to be around barns 1 through 4, but we haven't finalized that yet. So you'll know that as you get closer to the date. There may be a bit of a line when you arrive, so sometimes you have to walk a little bit or hand graze. It generally takes us no more than 15 minutes to get through the accumulated line. And so at the soundness check, you need to come without brushing boots or splint boots on. But your horse can be in things like soft rides or scoot boots if that is what they need to move comfortably on a firm surface. So if they're shod, great. If they're barefoot, great. But if they're barefoot and need boots to be comfortable, then they can be in those boots for the soundness check. It is not trotting. You'll be walking your horse on a firm surface and you'll be asked to do a couple of circles in each direction. We have experienced veterinarians doing those soundness checks, and we can see a lot at the walk, and it's much safer than having 385 thoroughbreds that just met up with all of their friends in Kentucky trotting up and down a hard surface. So that's what the soundness checks looks like, is you travel to there, you get in line over there. If you pass the soundness check, then you get a sticker that goes onto your bridle tag and identifies you as done, and you get entered into the system. So that's the gist of the arrival exams. And if we have a minute, I'll talk about what happens if you don't pass one of those. Is that okay, Rayna, right now?
Yes. If we can pause for just a second.
Yep.
I'm just going to touch on a couple different things.
Thank you.
So you touched on health documents and how they need to have a Coggins, health cert, and EHV1 are the three main in terms of health documentation that you all will be looking for. I just want to remind everyone that there are very specific dates for those things, timelines that you have to meet. That is all in the portal, in the rule book, in multiple trainer newsletters that we have emailed to you all. So please make sure you go and look at those now, especially EHV1. That vaccination needs proof from your veterinarian of administration. So if you show up with a purchase, like a receipt of purchase from Tractor Supply for the vaccine, that's not going to fly. And the approved forms of documentation are also in the rule book. And with that, we talked about check-in a little bit, and how you get into the queue is by coming to rider check-in, and completing rider check-in will automatically put you into the queue. So don't come to rider check-in until you're ready for your arrival exam. But don't come to rider check-in without your health documents uploaded into the trainer portal. If you come to rider check-in and your health documents, Coggins, EHV1, health cert are not in the portal, I will send you to the back of the line and tell you to get them uploaded, and then try to check in again. This is going to save the people behind you in line time and get them checked in when they have their documents in order. It's going to save our vets time. It's going to save us time. It's just going to be better for everybody. So make sure you get those documents uploaded ahead of time. Don't bring your horse with you to rider check-in. That is not a horse-friendly space. Happens every year. Let's see. Quick question for you, Shannon. What is going to happen for a competitor if they are not at their stall when the vet comes looking for them, when it's their turn in the queue?
Yeah, so you're going to go to the bottom of the queue. Is basically what's going to happen. We might have a little bit of leniency and we might text you, but if we're running real busy, we're just going to keep on going. So if you are not at your stall, there's going to be a notation made and you're going to go to the bottom of the queue. It doesn't have to be exactly you. If you have to go to the bathroom or whatever, then you can have an agent there at the stall. But if there's nobody at your stall and we can't find you, we don't have time to work real hard to find you. So that's what's going to happen. You're going to go to the bottom of the queue.
Yep. Awesome. And let's see here. And just a quick reminder for our ship-ins. So those of you that are not stabling at the horse park, obviously there's not going to be a stall for them to meet you at for the first phase of your arrival exam. So Shannon, correct me if I'm wrong, but for those that are shipping in, they're basically going to head straight to wherever the soundness exam is taking place. So barns 1 through 4, and you all will complete the first phase of the exam there.
Yes, and it is helpful. That area can get kind of crowded. So pulling in there with 4 trailers at once makes it somewhat difficult. So you might consider parking your truck and trailer, checking in and getting into the queue. And we know you're a haul-in, so we're not going to expect you to be waiting at a stall. And then either bringing your truck and trailer over if you have to, or walking your horse over to that area. And we have several stalls there designated that we can walk your horse into to get a little bit of quiet time. But yes, it's going to be at barns 1 through 4 or wherever the soundness exam area ends up being. And pulling into the middle of that before you've checked in while there's other trailers might make it a little bit chaotic. So you may consider, can you park closer or somewhere else to get, and then walk over, let your horse sit on the trailer for a minute and then work through it. And then there are some people that sometimes ride over. That's okay. And also we need the tack off. And I will generally tell you the horses get very, very fired up about riding onto the horse park and then coming over to be checked in.
Yeah. I think that the comment about parking your trailer somewhere else is a good point. And also to note, because you have to check in order to get into the queue, you might as well go put your trailer over in day trailer parking, and either yourself or a representative come to rider check-in, check you in. Because if you don't want to leave your horse alone on the trailer type of thing.
Yeah.
But you need to come get checked in and then walk on over.
And you won't lose your line in the you won't lose your line in the queue because you're not in the same queue. We know you're going to have to walk over to barn 1 through 4. So we'll give you a little bit of time for that to happen.
Yeah. Sorry, I shouldn't even use the word queue for our ship-ins, but what I mean is
Yeah,
even on the list
absolutely.
at all and be available for the arrival exam, your paperwork is not going to pop up for our vets until you are checked in. I have just one question I'd like to address before I turn it over to you to discuss what happens if they do not pass the arrival exam the first time. And I do have a question that is somewhat in that sphere that I'm going to get to later. So I just want to let that person know that I see their question, but I would like to get to it after we talk about that part. The other question I have is from Louisa, who is asking, can EHV1 be listed on the health cert, or does it have to be a separate document from the vet? And the health cert, I believe, is one of the approved forms of documentation. And I also have my handy dandy rule book right here, so I can triple check that. And it is a veterinarian on signed health certificate / import documents. So we're good there. And that is all I have for now. If you would like to kind of talk everyone through and hopefully ease their minds about what happens if they don't pass the arrival exam.
And I would say the health certificate is the easiest way to list the vaccines for the veterinarians because it's very straightforward and it also meets the regulations for crossing many state lines. So we advocate for having it put on the health certificate by your veterinarian as the preferred method. Okay. And so to discuss what would happen if your horse doesn't pass, there are mechanisms built in to work through that. And we will, at the time that it occurs, you'll be notified that that's the case, and we'll have a clear communication of what your next step is. We're still working through exactly how you check in and what that looks like to get the next exam. But essentially what's going to happen is there are backup plans. So let's say that your horse doesn't pass the first part of the exam because it had something off on the first exam. There is another veterinarian that is different than the first one that will repeat the entire first exam again. So it's a little bit blinded. They don't know theoretically why your horse hasn't passed, and it's a new veterinarian. And there are up to 3 chances to pass the exam. And we do allow for some discussion about when that second exam happens. So if you're like, my horse is tired, I need a little bit, we have some discussion about that. Now, if your horse doesn't pass because they have a fever, then we will implement some different strategies that you will know about before we walk away. So we do allow, our usual thing is we say, keep them in the stall for 2 hours. They can have a fan on them, don't leave, and don't medicate them. And then we take it again. And if the temperature is high, then we have other biosecurity mechanisms that come into place. But if your horse doesn't pass for any reason on the first part, they don't move on to the soundness. So don't do that. The first part is repeated by a different veterinarian who will do the whole thing again. And there are 3 chances for that. If the horse passes the first part and doesn't pass the soundness check, then ultimately you can come back again for the soundness check as well. And that is also can be scheduled at around a certain time. So you can give your horse a little bit of time to come down. They can do some hand walking, but they should not be ridden around the park if they did not pass the soundness check. So the mechanism, just to let you all know, is it's not an automatic fail and then you're done. You are looked at by more than one veterinarian. And if it comes down to the 3rd exam, that's usually with me, if I wasn't the person that was the first, and the steward. So there's some mechanisms for that. And if it is over body condition score, every time the entire Henneke scoring system will be done. So that's the gist of what happens if you don't pass. But we do need to keep in mind that if you don't pass, you have to start thinking about timelines, and you really shouldn't be riding or moving your horse around the park if they haven't passed the arrival exam. Does that express it clear enough?
Yes, I think so. And I think speaking of riding, either if you haven't passed or before your arrival exam, you are technically allowed to ride, school, whatever, before you have completed your arrival exam. So that's before you've ever been seen by a vet. However, we would discourage that because most likely wait times are not going to allow for that to happen. Most likely, ideally, there's going to be like a max of a 45-minute wait between when you check in and when a vet is at your stall ready to do the arrival exam. So if you decide you want to go off in school and then the vet can't find you, you are adding a lot of complications to this process. So while it is allowed, I highly discourage and plead with you to not ride before your arrival exam. That is personal preference.
And you
'Cause I
definitely
know,
you will not get into your show time without the arrival exam sticker.
yes, that's a good point as well. The ring stewards will be checking to make sure you have your blue sticker on your horse's bridle number when you enter the ring for your actual competition for your ride time. If you don't have it, they will turn you away. So that's part of the process. Once you pass, it's the soundness exam when they get the sticker, right?
Yeah.
So once you pass the soundness exam, the second phase of the exam, Shannon or whichever vet has completed your soundness exam is going to pass you your blue stickers to put on your bridle number and your back number. So make sure you do that. Make sure you don't lose those stickers. Because if you don't have those on, you will not be allowed to compete. And I think that that is my addition to that, but I will go ahead and read this question here. She says, I have a horse who I've been feeding and let down quite a bit, and he has stayed lower on the body condition score. Any recommendations? I treated for ulcers, lots of hill work, alfalfa, and free choice hay, 3 meals a day.
Okay. Yeah, here's my recommendation is the first thing is to actually have your veterinarian out now or soon to do a formal Henneke body condition score. And I mean, show them the form and remind them, because we all went to vet school and sometimes we're like, yeah, it's a 4 or it's a 5. If you're concerned, show them the form that's in the rule book, ask them to do that so that they can ease your mind about where you're actually at, right? That's the first thing to do, because you may be in a little better shape than you think you are. And horses will not change on a trailer ride over 12 hours a complete body condition score. That is true. And the other thing is, if your horse is barely a 4, I'm going to speak a brutal truth. The point is you maybe shouldn't ship in. So that's because the whole point of being at a 4 and a solid 4 is that you are healthy to show and your horse can put their energy towards it. So most horses have reached the 4, and most horses, honestly, that are concerned, or most trainers that are concerned about this are overly concerned because you're cognizant about it. So the first thing is make sure that you're actually on the border. And if you are on the border by your veterinarian, evaluate with your people that you trust for their opinion and the vet, whether you can keep bumping them up by the time you get to October, or whether you may have to scratch, because arriving at a 3.8, you're not going to get in and it's not going to get better there. So I'm going to bet in all actuality that your horse is reasonably body condition score for what looking for, because a 4 is also what athletic thoroughbreds right off the track are. Okay, that they're reaching that. So do consult with your veterinarian first. Ask them to formally do the entire Henneke body condition score. See where you're at. Make a plan for traveling to support them if you especially have a multi-day trip. Make sure you support them with good nutrition at the show, and don't push it if you're a little bit less than a 4 sometimes when the vet looks at the scale.
Thank you. And while you were answering that one, we got another question, which I am not going to answer outright. The question was, how many horses do not pass the arrival exam? I'm just going to let you all know that that is not a number that we release out of respect for those that have not passed the arrival exam. But I would like to use this as an opportunity to say that Shannon and the vets are not out to fail you. They would very much like for you all to come and be able to participate. And so, Shannon, I would also like to open the floor to you to just let everyone know how not scary you are. And that this is an inviting process and we're rooting for all of you.
That's a great answer. Thanks for making that answer.
Awesome. Well, let's see. Before we move on to just general horse management throughout the week, obviously we've talked specifically about the arrival exams, which is the baseline first phase of the exam, and the soundness exam, which is done at a walk, as we clarified. However, if people make it to the finale, which is the top 5 horses from every discipline, there is an actual jog. And I was hoping you would give everyone a couple minutes to walk them through that process as well.
Yeah, okay. This is a good one to sort of think about ahead of time, because one, allows us to be optimistic that you might arrive and get into the arrival or to the finale jogs. And so my first thing to tell you about is where and how those occur. So we have the finale jogs now in the end of the covered arena on footing that is similar to what the horse will be showing on. So in the past, we were in the jog lane that used to be used for Land Rover and things like that. It was a little tough on our horses that had been there all week. And again, all their friends were there and they had never jogged before. So we are in the covered arena and the footing is similar to what you all showed on. It's packed down a bit with a machine to pack it down some, but it's still pretty reasonable for what you will be showing in. The other thing is you will be grouped by discipline. And then if you are in the finale for more than one discipline, first of all, congratulations. And second of all, we work through scheduling to see which fits best. So that the horses that are doing competitive trail are sort of grouped together, makes it a little easier for the veterinarians in switching back and forth between the 17 two-hand future eventer and the 15-hand barrel horse and the way that they move. So that's one of the ways in which we've tried to assure fairness and ability to watch them go, is that they are grouped by discipline and they are going to be on the footing that will happen. If you are called the finale exam, there is a warm-up area that you would all be in, and then you would come down one at a time. They don't see the other horses while they're doing it, and we try to keep fans and people a little bit so they can kind of see, but they're not right up in there. That helps the horses out some as well. You're going to have very clear directions with signs, if you've never done a jog before, that say walk to here, stand here with your horse and present them. And most of what time it will happen is you'll walk to a certain spot, you'll halt, the veterinarians and the steward will walk around the horse to just get a general look at them, and then you'll receive instructions to go ahead and trot or jog off depending upon your discipline. We may get that backwards, but you know what I mean. And then you're going to go down a lane and you're going to stop trotting to walk and turn the corner to come back and trot back at the veterinarians and the steward. There is always more than one veterinarian looking at the horse, and so it's not just a single veterinarian's opinion. And you may be asked to jog again because maybe your horse was a little silly or they were a little crooked, so you may be asked to jog right there and then. The veterinarian may ask you, hey, can you think about moving your hand down here on the reins? And if you think that'll make you lose control of your horse, then talk about it. But if they're asking you to move your hand somewhere or put a different headstall in, it's because what you're doing is making your horse not look their best. So trust them when they ask you to do that. And if for some reason your horse is deemed not to reach acceptable soundness for performance, you'll go to a hold area. This is where it's a little different than other high-level FEI jogs. There's not going to be a vet talking to you in the hold area and going through the history. It's just to give you a moment, walk your horse, think through it, and then you'll be brought back down to represent several horses later. And you can even say, can I wait a few more minutes and come back around? So if you are, I guess we call it into a hold, you go into a hold area and you will represent to those same veterinarians as well in a similar fashion. In between, if you need to change tack or do something different, you got to talk to the steward so that we have an idea of that's what's going on. So if a horse is looked at a second time and still deemed to be not sound for competition, then they are what is called spun. There is no discussion about whether or not that was okay. It's on the spot and the decision is final. And if you are spun, it doesn't drop you all the way out of the rankings. You can look in the competition book for things like that. It's really unfortunate when it happens. We try to do the best we can to set you up for success, but the decision is final. And there are protests for certain things, but read the rule book and it's not for the finale jogs.
I think that is a great point and a great segue.
Can I make one more point? Sorry.
Yes.
Also, I should say you should practice a little bit ahead of time, jogging your horse in hand. And also, we set it up. We show you where we're going to be the night before. So you want to, at least if you make it to the finale, have worked through doing it before you get there. Even if you don't think you're going to make it, practice trotting in hand with someone looking at you with a clipboard, just to make your life a little easier and your horse to understand. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're fine. I was going to touch on that a little bit as well. But I wanted to start off with saying first, just as a whole, veterinary decisions are not like protestable. They are final. So that is for the arrival exam and for the jogs. These are professionals. They know what they are doing. And again, we are not here setting you all up for failure. If they have made a decision, it is with the information they have, and it is with the horse's welfare in mind. But along with that and talking about jogs, I have, just from watching it over the past couple of years, have a couple tips and tricks for you all. Shannon talked a little bit about hand placement and generally practicing your jogs. A lot of people, especially those of you from Western disciplines who are used to hearing jog mean slow trot. When you are jogging a horse for soundness, you gotta book it. And so absolutely practice it. I've also seen nerves get in the way of a lot of competitors from being able to properly jog their horse, whether their hand placement is messing with their horse or they're not able to get enough speed, whatever that is. You are welcome to nominate somebody else to jog your horse, or if you jog them once and you realize those nerves are there and they weren't there before, I'm probably there and I'm happy to jog your horse for you. I've done it before, and I can book it. I look ridiculous. I'm not a cute jogger, not a cute runner, but I will be happy to jog your horse for you if you, for whatever reason, feel like you can't do it yourself. Maybe you hurt your ankle even and physically cannot do it. Keep that in mind as well. But someone is happy to help you in that situation. And another thing to keep into consideration is the head stall that your horse is in. That can interfere as well. We talk a little bit about, discipline appropriate head stalls for the jog. However, you wouldn't want to jog your horse in something like a Basel. So in that instance, maybe just think about putting your horse in a leather halter and a lead rope. But a general like snaffle cavesson bridle is probably okay. But maybe not something with a big leverage bit that might send mixed signals when you are pulling on it and trying to move them forward. Think about things like that a lot of the time for the jogs. The simpler, the better. Anything to add on that note?
No, that's exactly perfect. The simpler, the better.
Awesome. All right. So with that, I think we can move on from the arrival exams, jogs side of things and talk a little bit about horse management throughout the week. So some tips and tricks for these guys to keep their horses happy and healthy from day 1 to day 5, ideally. And we know it's a long week, weather dependent, the ground might be hard. What can these guys do to set their horses up for success?
Okay, I'm gonna try and chunk it out so I remember to say everything. I'm gonna start with the first thing, which is biosecurity. All right, and this is a big one for us. We know you're gonna see your friends. You're gonna see a bunch of different horses. There's some simple things you can do that can help to keep your horse safe. Please, please, please take their temperature every day. And take their temperature every day. And if it is higher than 1015, we need to have a veterinarian see that horse. And it is in your best interest to do that. So take their temperature every day and don't leave the stall if it's too high. That's the first thing we're going to ask people to do. You don't have to report it anywhere, but it's just good practice. Don't share water buckets with other horses unless you absolutely have to. Like if they're going to die of dehydration because they're panting, okay, well, the trade-off is they get the water that's closest to them that you can get access to, but tend not to share water bags. Don't take hoses that have been in another water bucket, filling the water in that water and put it into yours, because that's essentially the same as sharing saliva. Try to minimize nose-to-nose contact with horses that you don't know and didn't travel with, and try to avoid sharing tack that goes in their mouth without cleaning it. So we want to think about, you have 350 plus horses coming from all over the country in all sorts of trailers. Think about it as the first day of daycare. If every kid in daycare just came from a summer camp in a different part of the country and you have to go to work the next day. That's what you kind of need. If you don't have kids, which I don't, you can find another analogy, the dog park, whatever there. So keep biosecurity first in mind. That's the first thing to say to keep them happy and healthy, and take their temperature every day. The other thing is, there's a lot to experience at the horse park. It's a long show, and set yourself up for success. If you're doing jumpers, maybe you're down there schooling, maybe you're doing under saddle hacks. Maybe you're enjoying going on rides with your friends at night, and that is all great. And realize that some of these things are exhausting for your horses. The time under saddle for them, which is peaceful, and the trail ride may not actually be as peaceful for them as you think it is, especially if you are out of their stall with them for multiple hours a day, because that ground can get kind of hard out there, and there are horse paths, but you do have to traverse firm footing. So where I have seen people really get upsetting news is when their horses did awesome And then they made it to the finale. By the time they got to the finale, they were so body sore and foot sore from moving around the park that there was nothing actually permanently wrong with them, but they couldn't show because they had been sort of moment by moment worked into exhaustion. So we want to keep them nice and healthy and out of their stall, but just be aware that for them, not everything that you think is fun is lack of taxing for them. So that's the biggest thing, I think. Do check their feet. If they lose a shoe, we have a farrier on site. Get it worked on right off the bat. Keep them in footing that will help them when they are resting. So heavy bedding of stalls or keeping them in soft rides or something, and then will help. And then making sure that you have checked your saddle fit before you get there, because saddle fit might be okay for riding 20 minutes at a time, 5 days a week. And then when you get there and you're in the saddle for 2.5 to 3 hours because you went trail riding and things like that, we get some really sore backs at there as well. So mostly what we see is sore feet. And if your horse, if you know how to do it, it is sometimes helpful to pack feet, meaning there are things like magic cushion that can go even on shod horses that may help to decrease some of the discomfort. And some horses, it doesn't work for it, but it's something to keep in mind. Also be aware that we are showing under USCF drug medication rules. And so you should familiarize yourself with that and think about what you could or could not give if your horse gets a little stiff, sore, or tired. So that is something to definitely keep in mind. But generally setting up for success, be mindful of biosecurity. Think if everyone's walking around petting every horse in the barn, it's okay for you to say, hey, you can visit with my horse, but can you wash your hands first? Think about that. Think about your tack. Think about what they're sharing, and then think about all the hours they're spending out of their time. I promise you that ground is hard. And if they're not shod, and even if they're barefoot and they've gone on 3-hour-long trail rides and been fine, they will not be fine if you spend all week at the park barefoot, not being cognizant of what that's going to look like in the end. It's good footing, but it's a week-long event.
I have a couple different notes that I pulled from just in general and last year's webinar on this topic. And you spoke on it before, but to the extent possible, please use the horse paths and keep your horses off the asphalt. That is also going to help.
Yes.
The horse paths are not perfect, but certainly better than walking your horses on the road all day. Dr. Reed touched on it, but the stalls at the horse park are in fact concrete flooring. You can either choose to bed super deep or rent stall mats, bring your own, come up with your own makeshift stall mats, whatever it might be. Everyone kind of has their preferred method for bedding. And do you have a particular method that you like the most, Dr. Reed?
Oh my gosh, yes. First of all, I tend to be a little bit cheap and I don't want to haul a bunch of shavings and everything with me. So I would often, on my way to the horse park, just stop at Tractor Supply and get these things. But sometimes I would bring them with them. So when I showed at the horse park, I would usually buy 6 bags of pelleted bedding. And so those are the wood pelleted bedding made for stalls. I would buy 6 bags of that. If you're doing the math, that's around $40 that I would spend on pellets. And I would put that down first. I would put the bags down and then I would wet those so that they formed the soft, like when you get the pellets wet, they form like a fine powder that you can then kind of walk around and pack down, and it almost creates a stall mat. And then on top of that, I would put several bags of fine shavings, and that's what I would use as my base because I didn't want to rent the stall mats. I don't know how they were disinfected. I'm not really sure who did what with them. And so since stall mats are exposed to a lot of poop as a veterinarian, I wasn't super comfortable with renting them. But that's what I would do is I would buy at Tractor Supply, mount 6 bags of pelleted shavings, put them in, or pelleted bedding, put them in first, get them wet enough that they form that fine powder, walk on it for a few minutes, and then I put 3 to 4 bags of shavings on top of it to make a nice cushiony thing, and then cleaned around it. So that was my preferred method because it was fastest for me, and I didn't want to haul mats, and also I didn't want to use somebody else's mats.
Awesome. Thank you. I know everyone has their preference, and I think it's very interesting to hear all those different preferences, but I think it's also very helpful to hear the preference of a vet. So thank you for that. I also have here, you talked last year about the importance of using clean saddle pads.
I
about
did,
it being
yes.
a long week. So would you like to elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah. So we've also seen some horses come up with saddle sores that weren't due to saddle fitting, but they were due to sweat that built up on the saddle pad and then almost gave them like a cutaneous irritation or skin irritation. So if you're showing Western, you need to stiff brush clean that thing each night, or bring 2 pads that you can swap out. And if you're showing in the English disciplines, you should bring enough clean saddle pads to have a clean one every day, because they will sweat from nerves and other reasons, and then you will get irritation and rubs that never occurred before because of it. So bring, if you're English, plenty of clean saddle pads to use for schooling every day. And if you're Western, have a mechanism for how you're, and I will say honestly, not to pick on them, it was often the people with Western saddles that came that had never had their horses in that type of situation. They're like, yeah, my horse sweats all the time. Nervous sweat is different than hard working sweat and the chemical components of it. If you're not sure about it, run from a bear and then smell yourself. Okay. It's true. So the point is, make sure that you have clean saddle pads that are not going to cause irritation. And if you don't buy a new saddle pad for a Western saddle and use it for the first time at the horse park, because you may find out that it doesn't work for your horse. But yeah, clean saddle pads is going to go a long way towards preserving skin health when you change environments like that.
Thank you. And I have a question that wasn't necessarily covered last year, was maybe touched on in different roundabout ways. As we know, the weather in Lexington, Kentucky, in October is all over the place. It is summer one day, winter the next. So how can everyone best handle the temperature swings for their horses and set them up for success? What are the different things they should do?
Okay, yeah, that's a great question, and one to think about ahead of time, because you can check the weather and it might not always even hold if you left 2 days before. So I have been at makeovers where I have literally been dying of sweat and being like, I wish I hadn't told the students that it was only professional to wear khakis and jeans, because I can't right now. So I have been there where it's been 90 plus degrees. And so that's one situation. And I have been there where it's been really beautiful, crisp fall weather where I wasn't cold. But if I had been a horse that was body clipped, I would be cold. And so you want to prepare for is maybe thinking about, it could be really hot and your horse could be quite nervous. And so if you have the capability, if they've grown in their winter coat, to clip, then maybe you would consider doing that before coming down. But if you live in North Dakota, we don't want you to clip your horse so that they can come to the makeover and then return naked to North Dakota. Okay. So there's some ways to work around that. But think about the fact that it could be quite hot. Bring some fans, and the fans have to be 3-pronged fans to hang at the stall. That's a good point to think about. So have a fan that you can hang on your stall. If you haven't done that before, check in with a seasoned friend. I just throw mine in a hay net and tie it onto the stall that way. Have a fan. Bring a light sheet and or a blanket that you borrowed from somebody else if you don't have them already, because you may find yourself wanting to have something for the nighttime. The best thing about it is you do have night watch. So you can pay for Elaine to do night watch. And if it gets way too hot, she can take a blanket off for you. I'm not sure that she'll put them on, but she'll definitely take them off. So I would bring a sheet and a blanket if you can. Especially if you're going to clip, think about it getting down into the 40s at night. And then also be aware it could be in the 90s. So you got to swing in that direction too. And consider bringing something like a cooler, which is what, if you're not used to them, we use after we get our horses wet to help the water evaporate faster if it is cold. So that's some things to think about is what the temperature could swing to. And it is easier to add warmth than take away. And it really sucks to be trying to body clip at the horse park. You don't have to body clip to get through a hot season, but you do have to modify your ride times and how you're going to cool your horse off and what you expect of them.
Thank you so much. And you are covering different things on my list. So I'm over here with my pen, like crossing things out. And that's also what I'm looking over here.
Perfect.
You touched a little bit on night watch, which is on my list. And so I circled that as you said it. And I just wanted to elaborate very briefly for those of you that might not know. Elaine does, it is, her business is called Night Watch. It is that simple. She is all over our trainers group offering her services. And if you're not on Facebook, send me an email. I will get you in touch with Elaine. She and her team are wonderful. And they will throw feed, throw hay, check waters, generally check on your horse at night in the morning. So that might help you not have to worry about rushing out so early or coming out so late, generally, and it gives you an extra set of eyes on your horse. So super important. A lot of people think, I don't need that, but signing up for her services can seriously take a huge load off of your shoulders for the week.
And I not at the makeover, but at another show, I'm pretty sure Elaine saved my horse's life by noticing something that was going on in the stall. And I wasn't paying her that day, but she already had my contact, and she's like, I think this is your horse. And I was like, shoot, Elaine. So she's good people.
Yeah, that's not the first time I've heard something like that about Elaine. She's watching and looking out for all of your horses. So it's really important to get in contact with her. Yeah, you should pay her, but and in order to even for something like that to happen, you need to get on her list. She needs to know who you are. So get on Elaine's list is my advice there. So before I just kind of jump into some other tips and tricks that are not necessarily veterinary related, couple things that you talked about last year was water, 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 and forage, forage, forage. So would you like to talk about hydration and just general forage and preventing ulcers and all that good stuff?
Yeah, I would. You need to bring at least 2 buckets for your horse's stall, and they need to be large buckets that can be hung, not a corner laundry basket or something like that. And in hot weather, we can basically say that horses should be drinking at neutral temperatures with no activity. Well, we say 1 ml per pound per hour. So for a 1,000-pound horse, they're going to drink 24 liters a day for their maintenance, which is almost 2 of the large buckets of water a day as maintenance, which means that if it is hot, then they're going to double that. Okay. And if you choose to do electrolyte water or things like that, that needs to be in addition so that they still have the water to drink that is separate. So all electrolytes really do, they do sometimes replace the actual electrolytes as claimed, but they also drive them to drink. And so, and not in the alcoholic way, but in the water way. So if you're going to put electrolytes out, they need to have plenty of access to plenty of fresh water while they're there. And that includes 2 buckets that are refilled on a constant basis. Kentucky Horse Park has excellent water pressure, so there's no excuse for saying you don't want to fill 2 buckets. It'll sometimes blow it right off the handle there. But at least 2 buckets of plain water per horse, checked multiple times through the day, is what we're looking. And do not skimp on hay. If you bring enough, or go ahead and bite the bullet and get it from one of the feed stores in the area, because how you will keep your horse from getting ulcers is to keep hay constantly in front of them. So it is nice, and maybe use GastroGuard if that's your vibe, or Ulcer Guard for traveling, but keeping forage in front of them keeps them healthy. And if the price of hay is making it hard to come, we need to figure out a different way to get through that. So we just really recommend constant sources of forage, unless there's a reason that your horse can't have hay, then we can work through that. But don't skimp on the hay, don't skimp on the water. And if you're going to do electrolytes, make sure they have access to other plain water in addition to those.
Awesome. Thank you. We do have a question in here that is going kind of back to questions about the stalls, asking, can you buy shavings at the park? Yes, Deaver is your friend. Their phone number is in our rule book. You can also email me if you need that information. You can order shavings, again, stall mats. You can order some grain. You can order some hay. They have a lot of different options that you can order on site and have it delivered straight to your stall. There's also a Tractor Supply down the road. If you would like to be a little bit more cost effective, you won't get the delivery at your stall, which is obviously very convenient. But if you need something at the horse park, Deaver is the way to go.
Yeah, and there's going to be vendors there. So if you forget a bucket, you can get a bucket. If you need Ulcer Guard, you can get Ulcer Guard most of the time. And I often start out being cost conscious, and by the end I'm like, just run a tab at Deavers. I can't go get this extra thing. But yeah, you're going to have Deavers on site, and then you're going to have other vendors that are there if you forget electrolytes or you need an extra bucket or things like that as well.
Mm-hmm. And this is an excellent question. Any advice for buying hay when you're not local? How do you know you're going to get hay quality that's similar to what you're feeding at home?
Yeah. Okay. So a way to do this that's reasonable is to think about getting at home for a couple weeks beforehand or a week beforehand, feeding some of the Stanley compressed bales of hay, because the Stanley compressed bales of hay are sold at almost all feed stores. So you can, if you buy a Timothy bale from Stanley, it is going to be the same hay that you're going to get there. So if you can't ship in with your hay and you're coming from an area that has like a very specific vibe to it, if your horse is on coastal or Bermuda, you're not going to find that in Kentucky. It's so you either need to haul it with you or think about doing the compressed hay bales from that company, because that's going to be the same in Kentucky as it is in other places. That's my biggest tip for it. Is it's a little bit, they're hard to carry because they're heavy. And they may be a little bit extra pricey, but you won't be changing the price, or you won't be changing their diet, because they're all large lots, similar grows sent throughout the country. So that's my first tip for doing it. And then otherwise just bring enough forage from your source. What comes from Devers is always really good quality hay, and you'll pay for it. Not as much as California, but definitely more than say I paid in Missouri.
It's a big convenience price tag there too, for sure.
Yeah.
But
But it's good quality. It's
it
worth
is
the
good
quality
quality.
of what you pay.
It
And
is.
they're big bales.
Yeah. Let's see. Schooling. So you've talked a little bit about exhaustion and overriding horses, and we know that there are some discipline combos that lead to exhaustion faster than others. Particularly comes to mind for me is the combination of field hunters and eventing. That's a very that requires a lot of exertion, and unfortunately is not, field hunters is across 2 days of prelim competition. What are some ways maybe people can either combat that, or signs to look for in their horses that they are exhausted and they need to give their horses a break, or what can they do to kind of help get their horses through that?
Yeah. So first of all, if you are going to be doing field hunters, come with a fit horse, because that day is not even the same as a general hunt. It's pretty fun. It's one of our favorite activities, but there's always a little bit more in epinephrine, endorphin releases on the horse's part, because it's a little different than being in with a bunch of draft crosses that calm you down. You may have a few friends that fire you up instead. So have a fit horse. That's the first thing. And if you're doing both eventing and field hunters, you need to have a fit horse that's more than novice fit, or at least above that, really, because you're going to be doing those two in the same day. And you may have to make the decision to scratch if you feel like your horse isn't feeling it, to get them concentrated towards one discipline. So you want to figure out before you get there, what's your primary focus, and watch your horse. And some ideas that they are getting tired, or they should be, is if you are jumping them and they are in warm up and they are missing distances or refusing fences and they didn't before, your horse is tired. If your horse is, when they are standing in their stall, if they're doing a little bit of buckling at the knees or swaying, that may mean that they're not getting enough sleep and they're getting tired or exhausted as well, or they're having a hard time laying down. Those are some things to watch for. If they have an attitude change, that, I mean, all of them get a little excited when they get there, but if they went from being a pleasant, happy horse to ears pinned, I'm not feeling it, that usually means that they're not feeling it. So that's another thing to watch out for. But the biggest thing is bring a fit horse if you're going to compete in two disciplines that require fitness, expecting that they're going to exert more energy by the location and by traveling. So they're going to have hauled in. So that's the biggest thing is don't do those disciplines without having a fit horse. Consider whether or not you have a primary one that you want to put your energy towards, so that you decide, like, this is what I need to be. Because those two, if you stack up the morning ride for field hunters and then stadium and cross country on the same day, that's a fair amount for a horse to ask.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for covering that one. I'm going to slightly switch gears, and then I still have a couple more bullet points.
Okay.
But we are getting through it. I want to touch on a little bit, because we don't have Kristen Bentley here with us today. Kristen Bentley, for those of you who don't know, is our communications manager, and she competed in 2018, I believe. And she has a cattle ranch, working cattle farm up in upstate New York. Her horses are out 24/7. So she came to the makeover with a horse that was not used to being stalled. So I think that is also something to keep in mind. She ended up having to, her horse did not adjust to the stall in the way that she expected. And she had to do a lot of hand walking all week, to kind of hand walking, hand grazing, to kind of keep her horse occupied, keep him calm and happy. So something to keep in mind. Yes, you can use stall guards, and they're set up so that like your horses wouldn't be able to touch noses if you are using a stall guard. However, make sure that your horse is familiar with stall guards, and that's not something they're going to immediately kind of just blow off and either run through, jump over, whatever it may be.
Join the
If
saddlebreds over in Alt-Tech.
yeah, if your horse is the type of horse that needs to hang their head out, because these are full stall doors, the stall doors at the horse park are full stall doors. So if your horse needs to hang their head out, be prepared to bring stall guards, but try that out ahead of time. Make sure that stall guards are their jam. Another wonderful thing that you can do, and you can do that now, is book a layover facility. There are a bunch of amazing facilities in and around Lexington, very close to the horse park, that do have fields that you can turn your horse out, whether it's for the night, whether you want to stable there all week and just kind of come to and from. I know plenty of people who will reserve space at a layover facility for the week, but then kind of use it maybe 1 or 2 nights throughout the week, and for the most part be able to get away with keeping their horse at the horse park. It's very dependent on your horse. Everything is going to vary horse to horse, but if your horse is not used to not having turnout time, or you know already that your horse requires that turnout time, I would suggest looking into a layover facility. Use the trainers group. There's a lot of great recommendations there. Yes, there are round pens at the horse park, but speaking of biosecurity issues, personally wouldn't necessarily recommend them. Also, they were reserved in full about a year ago. That is not something we control. We don't control the round pen rental, so those book up through Deaver about a year in advance. We don't even know when it opens. It's opened and there's a wait list before we were even aware that it opened. But there are people that have reserved round pens and would be willing to share their round pen with you. So there are options, ways to get around it. But generally, if you feel like your horse is going to need some turnout, some time to roll, to, maybe buck and just run around a little bit, I would look into a layover facility. Do you have anything to add on that end of things?
Yes, I agree with that. And also, most people think their horse is going to need something, and the bulk of horses are fine. So you should think about it if you know your horse. And honestly, you should have gone to a show or a venue before you come. Don't get there and be surprised about how your horse acts, because that doesn't set them up for success. So if you know it's a need ahead of time, then you should get it set up for sure. And most horses do great. And if your horse is there and they are having problems, having a panic attack, not adjusting, you can usually contact the veterinarians, especially me, and we'll put out a call and we'll figure something out. So we have never had a horse that we couldn't then be like, oh, okay, we got to adjust. Who can help me out? Where can we go? I've gotten horses round pens at 10 minutes notice. We can do that. We want you to plan ahead of time. But the biggest thing you can do is take your horse to an overnight show, if at all possible, see how they act, and then have a backup plan if you know that they're going to be Looney Tunes there. And if when you get there, most horses are fine, and if it's not working for you, we're going to help you figure it out.
Awesome. Thank you. So I have another note here that Kristen mentioned, and I thought was a good suggestion. And if you disagree, please feel free to chime in. But she mentioned last year, we always have amazing people that are offering services like maybe red light therapy or PEMF, MagnaWave, whatever you want to call it. And those things are great. Those therapies are wonderful. But the general suggestion from Kristen was to not try a new therapy that you have never done on your horse before, just in case they react to it in a negative way. So if your horse has never had MagnaWave before, maybe at the makeover at the horse park is not the time to try it. And same with hoof packing. She mentioned that her horses hate certain types of hoof packing. So maybe try packing your horse's feet ahead of time and see how they react to those kinds of things, and how they react to PEMF, MagnaWave, all different kinds of therapies. chiropractic, that kind of stuff, if that's something that you're going to be interested in the week of the makeover.
Yeah, and I'm actually going to highly recommend that you not have chiropractic adjustments while you're at the makeover within so many hours of showing. The vets that are there, they should have some guidance for you, but ask them, like, when can I be adjusted versus when I'm showing versus working? And if they tell you you can be adjusted right before you go in, that might be a thought to have. Is this the person I want adjusting my horse? So you want to think about that. And when they recommend the timeline is relative to showing, even if you use chiropractic work at home.
Amazing. And you already touched on, we follow USCF's drug rules and regulations. They have both an email and a phone number that you can get in contact with them if there's maybe certain supplements or any sort of medication, anything that you're unsure is legal. So please get ahead of that. There are some like super long withdrawal times for certain medications that you might already be, unfortunately, outside of that window of being able to pass a drug test if your horse has been using that. So it's very important to get familiar with those things and be prepared to use the medication report form if you are using something that you are allowed to use a medication report form for. There's plenty of substances that a medication report form is not going to override the use of. Anything to add to that, Shannon?
No, I think that covers it pretty well. There's lots of guidance. There's a medication booklet. The vets will be carrying it around, but ultimately it's your responsibility.
Yeah. Let's see.
And if your veterinarian medicates your horse and it's not in the rules, they're not the one responsible.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's see here. Now we're pretty much towards the end here, just a couple different comments. I did want to point out again, you might in fact pass the arrival exam. However, our judges, our stewards, all of our officials on the ground, something might happen between the arrival exam and your competition or even schooling or whatever it might be. If they see a horse that is unsound, our ground jury is going to be called. Dr. Reed or another vet are going to be called to make sure like everything's good. If your horse is unsound, just because you pass the arrival exam, if they become unsound by competition time, our judges, our stewards, our officials, they reserve the right to pull you out of the ring, and they will do so respectfully. But again, this is a showcase. This is also, we want to make sure everyone's doing the best they can by their horses. But they do reserve the right to make a judgment call there. And I just want everyone to be aware of that, that we are always watching, essentially. And again, Shannon, stop me if you have anything to add there. This is a fun one that Dr. Reed brought up last year. We have spent this entire webinar so far talking about your horses and how to make sure they are set up for success, but do not forget to take care of yourselves. I thought that was a lovely one that you included last year, and it is very important. I think as horse people, we often do forget about ourselves.
Yes. Hydrate,
Yes.
hydrate. Take care of yourself. Think about yourself. Be prepared to be emotionally overwhelmed sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And this is a great community. It's the happiest horse show on earth for a reason. So don't be afraid to rely on some friends, old or new, emotional support or water runs, whatever it might be. Please reach out to somebody if you guys need help for anything. And speaking of the happiest horse show on earth, Shannon, I wanted to give you a moment to talk about your wonderful vet students that will be coming. I think it's just an amazing program, and I'd like to highlight that for a minute.
Sure. Thank you for giving me that opportunity, because I always like to say this is you all are painfully aware that there is an equine veterinary shortage, and it's just going to get worse. So we bring these vet students in, and generally I say they leave there amazed that there are trainers and horse people that will accept them and speak to them this way. And I highly encourage you / demand that you treat them with respect. And also would love if you really share with them why you appreciate vets, what you're looking forward to, because this is the future for us, and they will be super enthusiastic, and we don't want to crush their little dreams while they're there, but we never have before. It's always been amazingly supportive, and they love it, and they really like talking with you all, and so you can share your perspective with them and make them feel welcome like you always do. But they're going to be in a range of experience, so there may be some first years. And there are a few fourth years that are about to graduate. And there are a couple coming as co-captains. The other thing I need to mention, which I haven't mentioned yet, and I will tell you this all later, we are going to have a couple of research projects running at the Thoroughbred Makeover, which you will be asked if you will participate in. They are all observational. There is nothing invasive about any of them, but these students have designed these projects. They intend to write them up and publish them. So be on the lookout for those while you're there as well, because they are things that will impact future thoroughbred health.
Thank you. The vet students are amazing, and I'm so excited to have them again, and so grateful for you for putting all of that together, because it's very neat to see every year, and just very encouraging that you're hopefully getting more people
it warms
interested.
my cold, tiny heart.
Yes, exactly. So I think it's also important, you talked about this a little bit. Why do we have the arrival exam? You know, this is not standard and every other horse show. Some people might think it seems rather strict. They're not used to it. But let's talk about how the arrival exam came to be, why we have it, how it serves the greater mission of the Thoroughbred Makeover and the Retired Racehorse Project.
Okay, so yeah, it's based on a few things. It's based on some of the myths that we hear about thoroughbreds, that you can't put weight on them and they're always skinny. And a little bit when we first started seeing horses at the makeover, there was a little bit leaning towards that. And in fact, what we decided is, why don't we change the advice on nutrition and how we work through this and hold everybody to a standard that we know is achievable, so that we can help to combat the myths about thoroughbreds. That's the first thing, is we want to go there and see fit, healthy, happy horses and give people the tools to reach those. So that's the first thing, was to be able to set the standard that says thoroughbreds can be sound, they can be in good weight, and they can be sane because of their training practices. And that's the biggest thing that started it. We did notice that people were looking for tools and looking for reasons to push them to do even better. And so that's it. And what I will say, it has grown in from first starting the exam is to becoming a national standard. There are multiple organizations that have contacted me to say, how do you implement this? What does it look like? We've had people fly over from the Hong Kong Jockey Club. We've had people from Australia come. We've had national organizations contact us to say, how do we raise ourselves to your standard? And that it is achievable. And we want to be the horse show that if something happens and a horse comes with an infectious disease, we catch it, we keep it on site. We just, that's what we noticed, is we had the capability with these wonderful trainers to set the standard for what it's going to look like.
Awesome. Thank you. And again, I'm going to keep going back to this. The Thoroughbred Makeover is an event put on by the Retired Racehorse Project. And I'm not going to regurgitate our mission statement to you guys, but generally we want to showcase these thoroughbreds in their best light. So the arrival exam plays a huge important role in making sure that we can accomplish that. And let's see, a little bit of a fun one that I just wanted to ask you. Outside of anything veterinary involved, as a previous competitor yourself, what is your favorite part of the Thoroughbred Makeover?
Well, just getting there is the achievement on and of itself. The emotion of having achieved, like, even if you didn't get there and you just work towards getting there, it's a massive achievement. So when you get there, it's almost like there's two steps. Like, yeah, you want to win or you want to do well, but first you just get there and you can take a deep breath and you're like, I did this. I made this happen. And then the people that I met while I was there, I mean, there's people that I did. There was a time when we were doing competitive trail where it took 3.5 hours to complete the class. We don't do that anymore, but I still am very, very good friends with the people I met there. And I see these groups of people that have formed that I'm like, how does that person know that person? It's because they shared a tack stall. It makes no sense. So I just love going to the makeover. It makes me feel peaceful about everything that racing does to get there and to see it. So separate from the veterinary world, I just go there and I'm like, man, the world is my oyster, if you will.
Thank you. That's an amazing answer. And I think really plays on the theme of the happiest horse show on earth, the connections that you'll make, the friends you'll meet. Just, it's truly an environment like no other. So I appreciate that. Thank you. And is there a certain food, drink, something that is going to get you through the week, obviously besides water, that maybe someone can show up to put a smile on your face if you need it at some point during the week.
I'm always a fan of Coke Zero or Cherry Coke Zero, and I eat Cheez-Its like it's my job. Just the original. Don't come at me with no white cheddar Cheez-Its. Do not come at me with white cheddar Cheez-Its.
I accidentally bought a box of extra toasty Cheez-Its, like purposefully burnt Cheez-Its the other day, and I just thought that was a crime against humanity. I didn't know that they made such a thing.
Some people really love them, so it's okay if you love them, but I'm an original Cheez-Its Coke Zero girl.
I like it. All right. So I think we've gotten through the majority of my questions, so I'm just going to generally open it up to everyone for any questions, anything we might not have covered. I see we have a couple questions already. So someone just made a comment generally saying that you can get great hay at Heimer Feeds. I just figured I would share that. I have nothing to add, but that is, someone put that in the Q&A. So thank you for that. Sarah says, where do we file drug forms? Hopefully I won't need any. You can email me for the form. There is a spot for you to upload it into your trainer portal. So that is a great question.
You can't use the online form through USCF because we're not a show that's on that list.
Yes. I think that's a very important distinguish. Like that is a very important to make. Words are hard. That is a very important point to make. We follow USCF rules. We are not a USCF sanctioned event. So if you submit the form through USCF's website, it does nothing. It goes to them, but we're not one of their shows. That's also why if you need to contact them, just generally ask them about if it would work within their rules, certain medications, whatnot. You don't need to ask them specifically about the Thoroughbred Makeover because we are not one of their events. We just use their guidelines because it is a great standard, and it's very easy to refer to you to those standards, but we are not actually a USCF sanctioned show. We are our own show. So again, it's open for questions. While I wait and see if any of you have some questions, I'm going to go over some housekeeping items. So we talked a little bit about microchips, and yes, the Jockey Club is going to let us know what numbers are registered to your horses. That's going to be for the vets to see. However, you all need to go right now, if you haven't already, take a scanner to your horse and make sure you can in fact find a microchip. Go into the Jockey Club's website, use their microchip lookup tool, look up that microchip and make sure it matches your horse. And if you need help, you can email us. But microchips get lost. They're faulty. It happens every year. We have a couple of them every year beforehand. And if you get to the point where you're needing to register a second microchip to your horse, you need to be doing that right now. And you need to be informing us of that so we can make note of it on your horse's profile. So our vets aren't like, okay, I found a microchip number, but it's not the one that the Jockey Club has or whatever it is. So anything to add on microchips. They stress me out every year personally. And I just want everyone to, the scanners are $20 on Amazon. You don't even need to have your vet out to scan your horse for a microchip, but please, whatever you do, scan your horse ahead of time.
True enough. And don't add a new one just because you can't find it. Have the vet look, have the Jockey Club make sure there's not already one on file. And if there is one on file, look again.
Yeah. Scan the lip, head to toe. We've all found them in some weird places. And we have truly had some that have gone faulty and have not been able to be found pre-makeover by multiple vets, multiple scanners, whatever. And that is a situation where you would need to register a second one and get a second one registered with the Jockey Club. And that is not an easy process. So don't skip to the second registration if you can. Avoid it. Not arrival exam related at all. However, I want to remind you all that final entry changes close in a little bit over a week. Next Friday, I believe, September 6th. So that is your ability to add stalls, tack stalls, change your stabling group name, change your jump heights. You can't change your disciplines or anything like that. But you can add things to your final entry, and you need to pay for those things when you add them. If you need to remove things from your final entry, such as a stall that you no longer need, a second discipline you no longer need, whatever it is, you're not going to be able to do that through the form. You're going to have to email me and I can do that for you. And you'll need to do that by 5 p.m. next Friday. Full refunds on final entry fees are only available until 5 p.m. next Friday. They are not automatic. You have to email me to request those things. That's for scratches, withdrawals, whatever it might be, for just removal of a stall, so partial refunds, all that kind of stuff. So if you want a full refund on your final entry fee for whatever reason, you are no longer competing, or you're just simply don't need your stall anymore, but you're still coming, that is my hope, better email me to request that refund. I also wanted to talk a little bit about the actual timing for the arrival exam, check-in, whatever. And this goes into our provisional schedule a little bit. Monday at noon, you cannot move in any earlier than Monday at noon. That is when your stalls will be ready for you. If you try to move in any earlier, they will not be ready. There's a show before us, and that's just kind of how things go sometimes. So please do not plan on showing up anytime before noon on Monday. And check-in will be open from noon until 5 p.m., I believe. And arrival exams kind of run around the same time. But be aware that if you show up at 5 p.m. on Monday, you might not get your arrival exam done until Tuesday morning. Other thing with that is Tuesday is our second and last day of check-in and arrival exams. We start at 8 a.m. prompt and at 4 p.m., so a little bit earlier because we do have our mandatory competitor briefing at 6 p.m. My biggest suggestion, pro tip, whatever you want to call it, is that you come on Monday. Give yourself, your horses the time to settle in, because Tuesday is also our only day for arena familiarization and ticketed schooling. So you want to come Monday, get your arrival exam done, kind of get the lay of the land, have your horse settle in, so that you can be one of the first people in your arena for ticketed schooling the next morning. Those arenas get crazy Tuesday afternoon, to the point that like our stewards that are monitoring the organization, the rings, might not be able to let you in, and you might have to forfeit your ticketed schooling arena familiarization opportunities as a whole, because by the time the arenas have to close, they were not able to accommodate you getting in there. They have to keep a safe number of people in the ring at all times, and they do a very good job at managing that. So if you can avoid it, please don't come Tuesday afternoon. And my biggest suggestion would be to come Monday morning and then get your schooling done, or not Monday morning, Monday around noon, get your schooling done Tuesday morning. Again, last call for questions regarding the arrival exam, makeover horse management, anything we've discussed here today. And if you're watching the recording of this, or if there's something you just don't want to ask in the Q&A chat, which is totally fine, I hope you all know by now that you can always contact me, and my email is secretary@therrp.org, and I'm here to answer all of your questions. So again, last call, I'm going to give you guys a minute or so to ask any questions you might have. In the meantime, Shannon, anything else you'd like to add? So from anything I might have just said, or just anything that's come to you from the past hour and almost a half.
It'll be okay. Yeah.
I think that's great advice. Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you just generally for being here with us tonight. Okay, we have a question not related to the arrival exams, but is there a schedule for the week? Ride times, prize list. I have not been able to find it online. So you're correct. You have not been able to find it online because ride times and the truly exact schedule will not happen until late September when ride times are done, because we do actual specific ride times for every single discipline for every single horse and rider pair. So there's about, if I remember correctly, 551 individual ride times that Molly and I need to schedule over the next couple of weeks. So plan is to get that out end of September. But I can tell you the general provisional schedule. We just kind of went over what Monday and Tuesday are. Wednesday is preliminary competition. Thursday is preliminary competition. Depending on your discipline will depend what day you're doing. If you're doing 2 disciplines, you can essentially expect to be riding both of those days of preliminary competition. Friday is going to be for those that make it into the finale, is going to be the finale briefing, arena familiarization, finale jogs. For those of you that do not make it into the finale, we are very excited to be offering clinics and guided schooling opportunities with the judges of some of our disciplines this year. Signups for that will open next week. That will be happening on Friday. Friday night is our competitor party. Tickets for that will be going on sale soon. And Saturday is the finale, and Sunday at 8 a.m. is when you must vacate your stalls. So that is the general provisional schedule that I have grilled into my brain. But in terms of like truly specific ride times, all of that, that will be available end of September. All right. Hopefully we have gotten through all of our questions and I've given everyone plenty of time to ask them. So I just want to say thank you again, Dr. Reed, for joining me tonight and for all of your wisdom. Very much appreciate it and look forward to seeing you very soon.
Can't wait to see you and aggravate you.
Very excited. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.